Defining Chinese style. Now this is thoughtful. Hello, I'm Trevor Lai in Shanghai. Last year, we invited 3 fashion designers to our studio to talk about how they're expanding their brands in China and overseas. This week on Thoughtful China, we're looking at the consumer side of China's fashion industry. Our experts will tell us what influencers are driving fashion trends, examine which styles and products are popular in China today, and tell us what Chinese women look for when they're choosing brands and designers. And Stephanie Zhu will share a thought or two about some hot local designers in China today and how they're changing the face of domestic luxury. But first, with us is Thibaut Villette, CEO of Glamour Sales China, the first online authorized outlet in China focusing on luxury, fashion, and lifestyle brands. Previously, he was president of the Coach brand in Greater China and VP of L'Oreal's luxury products division in Japan. Thibaut, welcome to our studio, and thanks for being on Thoughtful China.
My pleasure.
Glamour Sales started in China in around 2010. And you've spent a lot of time tracking trends and fashion trends specifically in China over the years. Can you tell us what are some of the key influencers that drive trends here?
Well, we believe that at the beginning, the influencers were the brands. And the more we study the markets, the more we notice the influence of what we call key opinion leaders. Alongside the big fashion magazines or fashion portals, those key opinion leaders who have major communities of followers are invited also by those brands to Milan, to Paris, to London, to New York to follow the fashion shows. And they're developing more and more opinions and they're becoming more and more influential. So for our communities of customers who are online shoppers, they have and drive a lot of purchase intentions. And they are very much followed by our customers.
And in addition to these key opinion leaders, you also have in-house editors who select products?
Yeah, we definitely have what we call in-house editors and merchandisers. They're working together. We separate our assortments according to different strategies. We have products which are really for fashion, to build up our fashion appeal, and who are more for what we call the fashionistas type of customers. And we also have more mainstream types of brands and products for customers who are a little bit more unsure of their taste. So we are tailor-making the assortment according to the different customer profile we have.
So take us through a bit of that process. If you're an editor at Glamour Sales, do you first talk to your clients, your brands, and say, you know, what are the types of trends that you're seeing, you know, in Milan and Paris, and what can you bring over to China? Or is it driven by your consumers, your Chinese consumers on Weibo who are talking to the KOLs and saying, you know, we'd like to see more of this product? Like, which way does it?
So it's really a mix of both. On the one hand, for example, last year, we saw the trends coming from England, and we saw the influence of Pippa Middleton, and we have been deciding to push our merchandising team to go after more British brands. I personally went 2 times to Britain and to meet some English brands, and we have been increasing the collaboration with those brands. It was primarily driven by our marketing team, and then we pushed the merchandising to follow. Conversely, we have every month a review between our social media manager and our merchandising team, and they are looking at what are the hot brands on the market. To give you an example, recently we did a campaign in the lifestyle category with a brand called Le Creuset, which is a home decor brand, very hot on social media, and we generated great sales, but most importantly, we had 860,000 people who participated in a campaign we did to promote the brand, the lifestyle, and so on. So it comes both ways. It can be bottoms up, it can be top down, and at the end of the day, what we try to do is to really have a double approach. Every day on our website we have newsletters, new events, which are offered by brands, but we also have once a week our chief editor putting together what she believes are the best items from each brand, which are the most relevant in terms of fashion, what are new trends, and she's creating what she calls her editor's choice, and she's selling that to our best customers who are the most sophisticated and advanced.
You've also probably seen some repeating habits and trends of Chinese consumers. Can you talk to us from style standpoint? Have you seen a shift from more bling and focus on logos to something more subtle or sophisticated?
This is a big trend on the market. What happens in the last 4 years is exactly what you described, a shift from in the show to in the know. And customers are, at least our customers, are moving away from the bling bling, are moving away from the logo, and they are looking for more settled types of products.
Now, obviously, you had a wealth of experience both in fashion and as well in the Asian markets, both in Japan and in China prior to starting Glamour Sales. And you've also brought up some interesting examples of how China's market and consumers are differentiated from the US and Europe. At the same time, you've also benefited from learning, I think, from European and US, similar online e-commerce fashion sites. Were there any learnings that really surprised you in terms of how Chinese consumers, in terms of their age, income, spending levels, really differed from the ones that the US companies, perhaps built their businesses on?
I really believe that the influence of social medias in China is much bigger than in the US or in Europe. I constantly exchange with my European and American counterparts, and really the social medias here in China do not have only an awareness effect, but they have a purchasing and a conversion effect. Social medias, KOLs are driving sales, and they're driving substantial amount of sales. The second is what I mentioned before, the importance of the storytelling part. The storytelling in the sense of the information, the level of details Chinese customers are asking is 2-3 times higher than other markets. So you need to have the right depictions, the right copywriting, but also the right customer care and abilities to chat and answer correctly the answers. The other thing is the constant effort you need to do in terms of brand building. China is a huge country, and you need more and more to be successful in China to clearly target who is your customer. You can't target 300 million shoppers. You need really more and more to clearly identify who you target, and then to use the relevant and cost-effective ways to target them. For example, recently on Glamour Sales, we did a campaign called the Glam Dog. We decided to focus in terms of celebrity, not on the traditional Chinese celebrities, but to take a dog, a Xiaomei, and to leverage this, and to leverage the digital videos that is pretty hot on the market. And we did that, but we did that first of all with the right agency, and then the way we communicated and we targeted the different target groups was very well thought and predefined. And this enabled us to increase our traffic by 50% during the months of the campaign versus the previous months. But we didn't have a dilution, or we had some dilution, but we still had a substantial amount of additional sales. Very often in China, people are embracing online and digital and counting the number of fans, but actually they're not looking at what is really impacting the business. And what I think is important in China when you are doing e-commerce is that driving the sales, getting the ROI is very important. And you really need to do that to drive, to target the right customers and find the most cost-effective way to bring him to purchase.
Great, Thibaut. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Let's take a break to hear from the sponsor of this week's episode of Thoughtful China, Cheil Worldwide. When we come back, Stephanie Zhu will share a thought or two about the influences inspiring local designers.
One of the unifying factors of Chinese contemporary design is how creatives always manage to incorporate Chinese tradition into their works. But what's changing now is how they do it. It's less through aesthetics and more through creative process and material. So while their products are beginning to look less Chinese, at the same time, you still hear so many Chinese graduates, now from Central St. Martin's or Parsons, talking about how deeply their designs are ingrained with elements of Chinese philosophy. The current class of design students use the Western academic educations effectively, but they still turn inwards towards their roots for inspiration. For example, industrial designer Zhou Jiezhang, who's a sleek, futuristic aesthetic, was actually trained as a traditional Chinese painter, so he takes a lot of his forms from nature. Sozin, on the other hand, uses traditional bamboo weaving techniques, but creates modern silhouettes that look nothing like their traditional counterparts. With this change in process, designers are now able to produce individually unique objects through return to craftsmanship. As a lot of these designers have grown up in a very mass-manufactured and often wasteful society, they see their work as a response or even as a rebellion to that. For example, fashion designer Mary H. only makes 2 or 3 of each of her clutches, so that her clients know that the purse was made especially for them. There's a very interesting and almost slightly ironic insurgence of Chinese individualism in design. Designers want their customers to have something that nobody else has. This kind of scarcity also creates a sort of more organic movement towards luxury in their designs. Because the Chinese design scene is so nascent, I'm really excited to see how it begins to shape its own identity underneath all these different influences.
Thanks, Stephanie. With me now is Alison Mary Ching Yeung, founder and creative director of the Mary Ching brand, Mary Bergstrom, founder of the insights consultancy Bergstrom Group, and Ruth Kuguru, executive editor of RZ Mag. It's great to have you back in the studio today. Today we're talking about fashion in China. Do you feel there's a more sophisticated sense of style developing across the country?
Absolutely. I think that Chinese have been kind of overwhelmed by the sense of novelty that happened in the 90s when brands were just coming in. And now they're starting to get a more sophisticated sense of not just what's new and different, but also what's right for them.
But is this something that's really only happening in the first-tier cities, or do you think it's starting to trickle down into the second, third-tier cities?
I'd say it's still predominantly the first-tier cities. And I definitely agree with you that definitely the consumer is more sophisticated. They're actually starting to learn how to mix and match, create their own styles. They're more confident to try new things as opposed to buying a whole look. So I think that's really important. And
what's fueling this? Is this primarily from media, magazines, or is it the fact that the brands themselves are holding more and more of their important shows here domestically?
I don't think it has so much to do with shows per se. I think that it has to do with young people really have a reason, a motivation to try on fashion. There's a real social capital that's gained by really understanding how to be fashionable, how to be trendy. And so I think that that's largely driving it. And I think that while it is primarily in Tier 1 cities and Tier 2 cities, I think that because of the internet, so many young people in lower tier cities are also being exposed to new things that they wouldn't necessarily see on their street corners.
And Ruth, in your magazine, you deal a lot with also women's issues as well as fashion as well. Do you think that your readers are also looking for more content that educates them about style?
I think absolutely. I mean, I think for us, RZ Mag is created for the growing group of modern women, forward-thinking Chinese women who are really looking more for ideas rather than just information. And when it comes to fashion and style in particular, I think there's a growing appreciation for quality and design, whereas perhaps before more you could tell the quality of an item by its price. I think it's less so. Now that people are more traveled and much more looking for personal style as a way to express who they are versus just looking for labels to define who they are. I think you see that transition, and based on that, for sure, we're doing much more around looking at independent designers and trying to present products that are much more around design and style and unique design versus just a label.
When large international luxury brands started to really explode in popularity in the country several years ago, there was a perception that they were pushing, big logos, big branded products, and a lot of bling. Do you think that's changing now and Chinese consumers are looking for more subtle and understated products and apparel?
I think absolutely. I mean, that's what we're seeing. When we approach fashion and style in our magazine, it's no longer about the label at all. It's more about the quality and does this reflect you as your own personality, your individuality. And I think people are much more sophisticated in their taste now than even they were 5-6 years ago.
But they're still into their bling.
They are into their bling, but not the typical
bring on
bling.
the bling.
But how do you define bling? Bring on the bling, but not the label. You can have bling without label.
I mean, look, let's go back a few steps. I think it's a combination of events with a media. So I think, these big brands are coming in because they do get a result. China is the #1 consumer of luxury products in the world now. They surpass Japan. But, when it comes to, when I say bring on the bling, I think Chinese still like crystals, lace, layers. They're a little bit OTT, they mix the, glasses with the hat, with the, tie, there's no limit to how many accessories they can have or wear at once.
I think the styling is very different, but I think in terms of, when you talk about logos and brands, really being visible on the street, I think that was really a developmental stage. Yeah. So, people were saying in that moment that they had the money, they had the means to really be part of this modern economy. And now they're saying something else. The developmental stage would have surpassed just saying I'm participating to now saying I'm really contributing something new and different that's personal to me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it can still be labeled.
Oh yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean, labels are completely gone. It means that, having a label just means that you're participating in a modern economy. It just means that you haven't been left out. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have a sense of taste or style.
And then more willingness to use multiple brands as opposed to just one. There's no leader now.
And there's no uniform where you perhaps several years ago would buy one brand like an LV and from top to bottom.
Exactly.
Now
Yeah,
it's
walking
mixing and
mannequin.
matching.
Yeah, it's kind of diluted a little bit more.
Yeah, but I think individuals are now the new brand as well. So before you had brands on you, and now I think that the new kind of sixth brand per se is the individual themselves, and then how do those labels reflect that individual brand is becoming more the take on things.
Well, it's interesting, as consumers become more selective and they mix and match, that's actually causing issues for these luxury brands, who of course had very aggressive expansion plans over the past few years. And now that the stores are finally built and they've expanded, they have overhead, they have staff, they have, stores that need to be filled with consumers, and at the same time, Chinese consumers are traveling more and more overseas. They're not buying as many luxury products domestically. How do you think these brands can compete now in a much tighter marketplace and one with much more competition that they had to face in the past, even as their consumers are heading more and more overseas?
I think that they need to know for the first time really who their consumer is. I think the time of coming in, opening your doors, and waiting for consumers to come in is over. So now it's really about how can you have a unique proposition that consumers are going to want to come in and buy something from your store, that they're going to want to come in and experience something from the X brand in China, not just the X brand anywhere.
In your experience working with brands, do you think they've come to this realization, or do
I think they're knocking on the door of that realization.
Okay.
So I'd like to add that I think brands have to be smarter. And what I mean by that is we could look at an example such as Value Retail, which is a concept from Europe coming over to China. They're opening in Suzhou. And they're a group of shopping, shops in a village. And it's more than just a brand, it's about the lifestyle and the experience. So I think brands have got to really be strong in who they are, but also what experience and what services they're going to give their customer. So I think that is where brands have to be careful of how they grow, in the sense of, yes, you can open a shop, but what is that shop going to give the consumer?
Well, you're a creative director with your own brand. So how do you, A, understand your consumers better here, and B, where do you look for inspiration to make sure that your next wave of products is going to meet them at their growth and their evolution?
Yes. Well, I'm very conscious of my consumer, her lifestyle, her likes, her dislikes, her age, her spending habits, maybe even her lifestyle habits. So you really want to make sure that the shoe fits the occasion. So that's very relevant for us.
Who are some of your favorite designers?
Uma Wong, love her. Masha Ma, I think she's fantastic. Yangdu, her sweaters are unbelievable. I love the designers here that I find things that I couldn't find someplace else. I love to see things that are really a unique take that I couldn't imagine another designer having the chutzpah to produce elsewhere.
How did you discover these Chinese designers?
It's my job.
But I mean, it's your job, but at the same time, you are obviously personally invested in it. You personally love the product. So it's not like a work thing where you surveyed and read off a list of names.
No,
it's because you actually love the product. So how did you, is it word of mouth or, you know?
Well, I think that, I mean, I'm one of the lucky people that gets to do what I love for a living. So I really am passionate about consumers. I'm really passionate about, you know, what do they feel really is an expression of them and how do they connect with brands. I'm really passionate about marketing and I'm really passionate about fashion. So you happen to grab a really great show for me. But I think that people here, you know, the passion that they have about fashion and about brands is infectious. So if you're studying them and you don't catch that, then you're not a very empathetic consultant. I mean, you have to really be able to understand both worlds.
For me, who are my favorite designers? I think of a lot. And the best thing I think for me is in Shanghai, it's a great city to be to finding designers. So people like Ijek or Helen Lee, or of course Mary Ching. But I think anybody who, or JNBY is another good one. I think people, like Mary just said, creating, just following their passion, really creating things that very unique pieces. I think that really are a true blend of East and West, not within China, but I think across the globe. So I think here in China particularly, I don't think it's hard to find new designers because there's a lot. I think, yeah, if you're into fashion design, I think Shanghai's a great place to be.
And Alison, do you have some designers that you admire as well?
Well, I'm the co-founder of the Fashion Map. I don't know if you've come across it, but it's a free map listing 42 local designers in Shanghai.
Oh, great. So what are a couple that we should definitely check out on the
Go and have a look at the map. Find them all there.
Well, Alison, Ruth, Mary, thanks for being on Thoughtful China.
Thanks for having us.
That wraps it up for today. Be sure to subscribe to us on Tudo, Youku, and YouTube. You can also follow us on Weibo and Twitter and join our LinkedIn group. We'll see you again.